Alrighty, time to do a video that I haven't done in a long time. I don't know what I'm going to categorize this under. Musings or stream of consciousness? Probably musings. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, I don't know what I think categorized as. Doesn't matter really. No, just take an opportunity to catch up with some stuff that was kind of a normal habit of mine in the past while, and just been, like, honestly, the past 3 weeks have zoomed by. Pardon the pun, I spent a lot of time on Zoom too, but yeah, no, I can't believe it, how fast this July and August have just been. And yeah, so anyway, right, it was just an opportunity to, drop a video without having much to do, but this one's got a bit of a purpose, which is nice. Last week I took a very close friend of mine out for dinner with her daughter, and so yesterday that her daughter had she's like just lots of questions, right? Like she was really curious but was really shy to ask, which is okay, of course. And even though like, my friend, her mom, was like, you can ask, everything's okay, which is good, because it's right, for me it is okay. And which is important, because lots of times with, people you're not familiar with, depending on how questions are asked, it could come across offensive or whatever, even if it was an accident or whatnot. And it was pretty clear, right, that like it's okay to ask. Like even myself, I've made it very clear when I came out to use my strengths to help educate and advocate. And questions don't hurt me, right? Bigots don't hurt me. Ignorance doesn't hurt me. Systemic failures are exhausting, but people's words don't hurt me. People's words are a reflection of themselves when they're hate-filled, and I can tell the difference between ignorance and innocence. And it's very easy to still answer a question and coach through it at the same time. So questions don't hurt, even invasive ones or things that would be considered taboo or whatever. And depending on who it is, I have no problem turning it back on the question asker to be like, your sweet spot's showing, right? I certainly don't mind being able to take someone's attempt of being malicious and bringing it right back to them. So I thought it was super cute, right? How that apparently was just questions nonstop, which was funny, right? It's like, I can't answer, just ask Taylor, da-da-da. And so I want to make it clear that, of course, who I'm talking about right now, I am going to be sending the link to this video to your mom, and I'm optimistic that, of course, she'll pass it forward to you so you can watch this as well. And just make it clear that anytime you want to reach out or ask any questions, you're more than welcome. And you can get my number from your mom, and you can send me texts or emails, or you can follow me on here, right, and send me a DM, or same thing with the HireWheller group that's going on, that you can ask questions for the Dwell on It segments that we've got going too. So if you ever have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask, and I'll be happy to answer for you. And same thing next time that we're out and about. Feel free to just, if anything's picking your brain, ask away. It's perfectly fine. So what I'm doing with this video is I'm going to take a couple of the questions, and by couple I mean that all of the questions that were, that I found that were being asked, right? And everyone's like, I don't know, right? I'm not the right person to ask those things, so I'm going to answer those questions. And what I also did is I did a Google and found questions that are, what's the name of this website here? Questionable questions about transgender identity. And it's a good subject for this site, because there's a lot of questions that people have as curiosities, and some of them are kind of taboo questions, right? Relatively invasive questions that cisgender people don't get asked. And so why does a trans person have to obligate themselves to answers, right? I'm okay with answering questions. That's how people learn. So I'm going to go through this website and go through the questions here that are pretty popular. And I'm just going to answer some questions. I'm going to do this for you, and of course for anyone else who chooses to give this a listen. I also want to take a really quick moment. Excuse me. I'm going to take a really quick moment to acknowledge Quinn, big success. Because if anyone who knows me knows I'm really interested in. Ow, that was kind of weird. Anyone who knows me knows I'm passionate about trans visibility in sports, and it's exciting that Quinn to have Quinn won gold, right? Like the first openly transgender, non-binary Olympic athlete winning an Olympic medal, and not just a medal, but gold. It's fantastic. And great match too. It was awesome. But I totally want to give a nod to that. That was worth a watch. But yeah, no, when we all went out for dinner, it was super cute, and I had a great time. And so I'm just going to, like I said, I'm gonna answer some questions, right? That I know that you were curious about. So one that was jotted a couple down here that I'm gonna get into this site. Boobs, all natural. Everything's all natural. Some days I'll appear chestier than others, and it's because I do have a ton of bras. I really do have a ton of bras. And I'm also just not really in a rush to go ahead and replace a lot of them too. And so a lot of my bras that I have are for a size that I used to wear kind of in pre-transition days. And so with pre-transition days, I did find myself using like silicone, not implants, but just like the, I can't even remember what the term is for them. Falsies. But I did have just a pair, and you can choose to have them adhesive or not, and whatever. And I definitely don't use them anymore, even if I'm wearing a bra that's a little too large for me. Mainly it's just because laundry, or I just choose to wear a certain color with shirts or whatever it be. But and I'm not going to go through a rush shopping for everything. Literally, I think I've got like, not counting sports bras and whatever, but I think I've got like 30 or 40 shop heavy. Not to say that they're all out of size, right? Like I've been replacing with, more appropriate size and so on, but they're expensive, right? I don't need to explain that to anyone. They're fucking expensive, right? At least for me. But, so I'm in no rush to replace them. And one of the biggest reasons behind that is that, well, not even that, even full disclosure, not only are they expensive, but, just with my style, I'm always matching, right? So, like, not only am I replacing one, I'm replacing some bottoms too, and then that adds up. So, the point though, like, when you're on HRT, it's essentially like a second puberty, literally. And so that takes time for things to happen, right? And that's for anybody going through puberty. So, there certainly is, like for myself, started to see breast growth after about 3 odd months. At least just start to notice, right? Like clearly something's happening in the neighborhood. And what I ended up adopting for myself, as I was coming out and starting to get more comfortable with myself, because one day it was just like an epiphany of like, stop caring about what other people care about. In that moment, I immediately loved myself for who I was. And I need to underline that I stopped worrying about trying to fit in to what other people would expect of me, and I absolutely fell in love with myself. I love my body. I love my body. I love me. and it's just the feeling that you get from just that self-acceptance was just second to none. And so, unrelated, but still to the point, that, I noticed eventually there'd be some breast growth and whatever, and what I do know, it takes a while. They're called Tanner stages. But, Tanner stages? Something like that. But anyway, right, there are stages of breast development, and ballpark about 2 odd years until you start to kind of see where things kind of land. And so with that, like, I'm not even going to worry about doing any major shopping unless I'm doing something like, unless I specifically want a certain color, or I need to replace something, or I need a certain style to go with a certain dress, for example. Then of course I'll shop for what I need at that time. But then otherwise I'm just gonna keep going with what I go with until things are starting to figure themselves out and go from there. Right now, what did I last measure at? 36A, 36A/B. Casually check, because again, I don't really care too much because I'm not really running around and replacing them. But a lot of the bras that I do have, usually in the B's or even C's, and that's just because of the fake, the silicone falsies that I had. And I don't use them, and I won't use them. And the reason for that is because they're temporary, and I don't want to wear anything temporary anymore, right? Like, I don't want to I don't need boobs to feel like a woman. Let's put it that way, right? I don't feel like I need to have a chest to validate my visibility. And then they're also just obnoxious to fucking work with, right? And even then, though, that still just also carries a lingering feeling from a past life, right, where everything was theater, I guess. It was temporary, right? I still wanted to, kind of fill all the pieces as necessary the times that I allowed myself to just connect with myself, but there was still always a knowledge of impermanence. Impermanence? Temporary. and so with that, I know that I just don't care about that anymore at all. Kind of like what we were talking about when we were waiting for a table, how we were talking about nails. I love getting my nails done, and one of the biggest reasons why I love getting my nails done is these are significantly more permanent than whether it's nail polish or even nice press-ons, right? But still, nice press-ons to me have a moment of impermanence, right? Because at least with gels, still in a roundabout way an adhesive, but definitely more long-lasting, permanent, right? You can't just wash them off, right, and then go back to work on Monday type of stuff. So it's the little things like that I'm happy, right, to just have maybe me, right, and I'm over the moon about that. All natural hair, right? Same sort of idea. I didn't even consider wearing a wig when I went socially full-time, right? Again, because it just harkened back to the days and times of temporariness. And so yeah, anyway, so that's, the curves that you see, right? They're just kind of based on pretty much, there's definitely something there, right? Like, nothing's fake, right? The only thing, like I said, that it's just like anything else, right? Like, everyone calls push-up bras false advertising. I love it, but still, right? That's the actual business there. That's real stuff. So, and it's just going to continue to grow. As a matter of fact, I started another prescription today that may or may not affect just, speeding things up a little bit. I shouldn't say speeding things up because I don't have a bit of a timeline, but may as well. Progesterone, I believe, is what it's called. And because the normal prescription that I have is estradiol, and I've got my dosage, the recommended dosage is maxed out for estradiol, which will complement my hormone blockers, which is, so that the testosterone produced is essentially mitigated, which it is, right? That my testosterone levels are essentially nil, and estrogen levels are exactly as they should be for pretty much for a woman my age. And progesterone is another hormone not often discussed, in the same neighborhood as estradiol, slightly different. So I'm not going to get into all the biology out of it, but one of the reasons why progesterone is used in HRT is because of accenting a little more feminization and whatnot. And the only reason I brought it up is just because I honestly almost totally forgot about it, but I was just scrolling through a thread in Reddit the other day, and I said, oh my gosh, shit, I should ask about that. Like, I literally had a phone call for like a lab follow-up the next day after I saw that thread, and I just brought it up. I'm like, if I can have it, add it to the pile. If I can't, then whatever, I don't care, right? I was happy for who I am. I'm grateful for who I am. I don't have any expectations. I don't have this visibility in my head about what that end result's supposed to look like or whatever. I'm just happy when I wake up. Happy when I wake up, and how it goes. So yeah, that answers that. And also, like, what I was saying when we were leaving dinner was, like, I know I have an athletic body type, right? I know that the way that my body, deals with metabolizing, calories and whatnot, and with fat and whatnot, that I'm likely, I should say, right? Because I'm curious to see what will happen with progesterone added to the mix. I guess we'll call it progesterone. Anyway, whatever. Anyway, this new one. Your mileage may vary, but I'm not expecting myself to ever be buxom. I know I have an athletic body type, right? I'm tall, I'm lean, right? Like, my muscle definition is, like, tight, right? Like, it's, like, high tone. So that where you do see muscle, it's, like, there. But I'm also not, like, hyper built or whatever. But still, like, I know that I'm going to have more muscle definition than curves, especially if I continue at the same just lifestyle that I have. If I recomped, who knows, right? If I chose to recomp and then end up having a lower protein, higher fat diet, right? Maybe I will round out in a couple areas, but I would still find it to be unlikely, and I just don't feel like that's kind of and not even just like the body presentation that I want, but just my body, right? I like sports. I like to be active, right? And I like to have my body feel like if I was going to play a game, like right now, right, I'm ready to play. So that's, and so with that, like, I might have not much upstairs, but I also don't care, because it matches who I am. I am who I am. Nothing's about matching. What you see is what you get. Right? So that's, I think that kind of answers that one. Now let's go to the other part, the downstairs. And remember, dinner was kind of impromptu, and it definitely was it was a hot summer day, right? So, never, right? And, so I had to make sure that, with the shorts that I was wearing, cover things up accordingly. And I shouldn't say that accordingly, but it goes hand in hand with with fashion. Let's put it that way. Hashtag normalize the bulge. But no, in seriousness, right? That if there's one thing kind of opposite of what we were talking about for boobs, is I absolutely do tuck things away. And so for me, like, a lot of trans women will do different things, right? Some will use a certain type of panties called gaffs, and then others have homemade gaffs, or there's a good handful of ways to take care of business downstairs. And for me, tape, straight up, I use athletic tape. It's not comfortable. It's not fun. It's inconvenient, but it kind of comes with the territory. It's unfortunate that it comes with the territory because it would be nice to live in a society where it really doesn't matter if, leggings or shorts or whatever had a bit of a, instead of what would be just your typical smooth front or whatever, but can't win them all. And so I go through enough athletic tape, and it's just what I deal with. There are other options, right? Like, kind of even back to what I was just talking about when it comes to stuff like gaps or whatever. I don't want to use anything like that because, again, to me, that kind of relates back to that pre-transition life, where in this case it wouldn't necessarily be about being temporary, but more of an acknowledgement of having, this is your specific set of panties because you're trans. Does that make sense? I don't want that. I don't want that. It's funny because, like, that being said, right, I'll be, doing whatever I do to take care of things with tape, and so it's like you're taping things because you're trans, but it just doesn't speak to me that same sort of way, if that kind of makes sense. I don't know, the purpose built, actually no, this kind of makes sense there. Athletic tape is athletic tape. It's for things, right? Lots of things, right? When I sprain my wrist, I put athletic tape on it, right? And when I choose to wear short shorts or leggings or dress or pretty much any clothing, right? Athletic tape and such and such. And the other thing, whereas, like I said, buying specific products because you're trans is like really saying, it's like, because you're trans. And I don't want that. I'm proud to be trans. And I'll happily say that I'm trans. And I'll wear that badge for the rest of my life with the biggest smiles that I can ever make, for sure. But some things, because I'm trans, I'm not cool with, right? Like, because I don't like the exclusionary part of it. I don't like the specificity of it, and so on. So, like, I'd rather, like I said, use something that is functional and gets the job done, still in a correct way, that just happens to be able to be used for other stuff too, as opposed to intentionally purchasing specific things. That's like, this is your, because you're trans drawer of underwear or whatever, right? So that's what's happening down there. I'm on a waiting list as well for, I can't remember like what the full word is, orchiectomy or so, something, but anyway, the short word for it is orchi, and that is, it's a day surgery, right, a surgical removal of the testes, and the reason why I'm opting for that are two things. I'm 40, I'm not having kids. I ain't having kids. And not to say that I don't want kids, because with the way that I feel, like now I feel like I'm in a happy enough place that I could be that parent. It's just also at the same time that I would like to rewind my life significantly, and so that a child of mine would be in I'm trying to think how to phrase it. I don't want to have kids for it, right? But like, if I can be a little younger, and then have a kid while I'm just a little younger, to just be able to resonate with them a little more. The age gap to me makes a pretty big difference. And then honestly, even to the point though, I'm still not done living my own life. Like that's something important too. It's not having kids is an active decision. I have a lot of my own life to live, and I know that, I totally understand the rigors of parenting. I don't know firsthand how it feels or what the experience is like, but I'm saying this as if I'm speaking to you specifically, not just publicly posting this video. Your mom's awesome. And your mom's always thinking, right? So, I understand the rigors of being a parent, and so it was a mindful decision of mine that if I'm not able to put that level of commitment and readiness into raising a child of my own, how dare I, right? Or like wing it or whatever. It wasn't something I was prepared to do. So anyway, back to the point of the Yorkie. So I'm not having kids, right? So I may as well shut the factory down. The reason why I say that is because when I was mentioning my prescriptions, so as I mentioned that there's estradiol and now progesterone, something like that. But then as I also mentioned that there are hormone blockers. So what's currently happening, and I hope you follow me with the biology here. I'm spacing out kind of a bit on it, but I think I've got the gist of it. So anyway, hormones are created, and then cells or whatever have receptors on them. And so then when hormones are produced, whatever it is, right, because there's more hormones than just testosterone and estrogen. Is it? Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, but there are receptors. And then so when the binding happens, that's when whatever hormone it is starts to do the things that it was connecting to do. So what the hormone blockers do is kind of in the name itself. It gets ahead of the testosterone and stops testosterone from getting connected to the receptors, right? So that it would allow, estrogen or whatever else to connect instead anyway. So what that means is testosterone still exists in my body, it exists in my blood or whatever, but it's not being metabolized or used until it just gets, sent off or whatever happens. So, while I take this prescription, that, even though, fundamentally that, testosterone isn't doing anything in my body, it's almost redundant. So, that by getting an Orky, right, well, essentially, as I just mentioned, we'll shut the factory down. No, shut the factory down, right? Blow it up. But then that also removes the need for the hormone blockers because no testosterone would then be produced. I think that's the long and short of it. I didn't really look too deep into it. But then even aside from that as well, a convenient byproduct is because then there's less stuff downstairs to, tuck away. It does make tucking a little more convenient, and as a matter of fact, sometimes depending on what it is, not even necessary. So that's just kind of one of those little small benefits. And honestly, even to the point, full disclosure, I might even get to that point where I wouldn't even worry about tucking anyway, just because again, it's really hypocritical to advocate and normalize trans visibility, trans just existence and so on. It's very hypocritical to normalize that. I really hope this hasn't been rubbing up against there. But it's really hypocritical to normalize that while also putting so much effort into falling into the expectations of binary policies. So, who knows, right? It's a long ways away, right? Anyway, because it's, like I said, it's a day surgery and it's elective surgery, and just with the fact that with COVID and whatever anyway, clearly that has messed around with our healthcare, and so anyway, I'm on a referral or whatever, and just let time be done. Who knows what'll happen by that time too. But yeah, no, and after that I might just be like, whatever, here's me. So that's currently what's happening. Will I ever do anything larger? Unlikely, and I specify unlikely because I can't predict the future, but for anything more significant, like the like a vaginoplasty and whatever, and that's with actual like I still to this day I struggle with words. But anyway, the big surgery. Um, that is a big commitment. That is a huge commitment for anyone to undergo, and and not even just commit. Well, yeah, no, think about it. When it comes to the commitment, that's definitely not a day surgery, right? And like that's like I'm even just trying to think of the words here, but just it's massive, and like happy with what I have, straight up, and who knows what my next relationship's gonna be like, right? And I don't have genital dysphoria. And what genital dysphoria is well, it's in the words, right? But dysphoria is a discomfort, right, of something, right? In general, of course, being genital, and so I don't have an issue looking down and feeling a sense of dread, right? And I totally empathize with trans individuals who do, because must be an absolutely chaotic feeling of like I have to get this off me or whatever. So I'm grateful that I don't experience that. I was saying to a few people way back when that if I ever actually did elect for a vaginoplasty or whatnot, it'd probably be out of vanity. Be like, I'm totally tired of smoothing things out. But that, even then, would just be like that would be like a huge decision, because again, not a day surgery. You're shutting down your life for what is it, like a year, right? Like of just like rehab, or not rehab, but like and again, depending on the type of surgery that you opt to get, because you can go ahead and have even things, I believe they're called like zero depth vaginoplasties, right? So it's more of just more like for visibility's sake, as opposed to penetration or anything like that. I shouldn't say visibility's sake, but you know what I mean, right? Like it's more just for get rid of the penis, but like not worried about anything else. But even if it was to be something with depth, right? Because of the expectation of something like penetration or whatever, like you literally have to dilate for like 3 times a day for 20 minutes each time. And it's not the fun, sexy thing. It's just literally being stuck in your bed, right? With pylon stuck in you, right? Like I don't know. I don't have any of that experience, so I can't say here's what does or doesn't happen. And honestly, I used to remember a lot of it off the top of my head just from my own research, but I know that I'm not worried about it. I'm curious. I should just catch up on it, see what's new, what different changes and whatever are as well, because the surgeries have evolved, and using different types of skin grafts and whatever, making not even just an easier process, but a more realistic process is a good way to put it too, even when it comes to stuff like self-lubrication and whatever too. So like medicine has taken steps, but aside from that, still, it's not in my cards. It's not in my cards, right? Like somebody telling me to sit down and not move for a year, I don't know if that's going to happen. That's a pretty tall ask. I'd rather just buy a roll of athletic tape and use it as I need it, and go from there. But like I said, I'm happy with the body that I have, and literally when it comes to the Yorkie, it's not for no other reason. Literally, it's just for practical reasons, right? Literally nothing but practical. No dysphoria, no whatever. It just makes sense, right? Because of other factors. That's it. So now, I think I covered a few questions that are on this site too. I'm going to put a link for the site as well, just in case anyone's curious. And this is going to go for a while, right? So, because there's one thing that I know, kids get stuck on YouTube anyway. So, sit and listen. Right? Watch whenever you need. Okay. So there's some interesting things when it comes to the preface here. I'll just address them too. So there's one part here that says, should I ask this question, right? Like in terms of self-talk. So you learn by asking questions, right? So should you ask the question? Absolutely. Be mindful of how it's phrased. So to bring that about, when it comes to, let's put it this way, there are a lot of people, when it comes to being trans, who are not visibly transgender, but for some reason there may be a feeling of a need to ask the question. And even for people who are visibly transgender, I'll say like me, that there may be questions that are wanted to be asked. But it doesn't hurt at any point to start with, is it okay if I ask you a personal question that I'm curious about? Right? It's about your phrasing. I can tell you myself that I'm happy to answer your questions, because then what that does is it helps you learn too. Because assuming is why things get so difficult in the world, because of presumptions and judgments, instead of just straight up learning. I'm capable of hearing the questions and being able to handle it if it's not phrased ideally, perhaps, correctly. Those are all subjective, right? Because the question's asked how it's asked. And how I choose to respond to that is a me thing, not a you thing. I have the ability to hear the question and understand where it's coming from. And then I can also hear your question, and if it is something that, if it was to be asked to somebody else, I can help coach you to, just so you know, this is a more mindful way to ask the question because someone else may have taken this hurtfully, right? Or this is a question that's really, really, really off limits typically, so be mindful about who you're asking, and so on and so on and so on. I can do that. So it starts with prefacing your question and understanding who you're asking. But under no circumstances should it ever be as if a question is not valid, because that's the only way we'll ever learn. So anybody can answer a question. It's just a matter of working with who you're asking so that it's received with kindness and then also responded, right, with transparency. So that's how I go about when it comes to asking the question. Because if you're shy, you're never going to figure it out. And if you're curious, you might do your own type of Googling and just assume that it's the same answer for everybody, or whatever. So, hard on the tailbone. And then, this is actually a good point too, that I see here. Would you feel comfortable if those questions were asked of you? And then would you ask anyone else the same type of question? Excuse me. That kind of goes to the same thing about being mindful about your questions, because it isn't right that trans individuals are expected to be subject to a series of questions that in principle could also be asked to others too. Like do we just ask everybody what's between their legs? No. Right? We only ask that question about people that we're skeptical about, right? And not say like your question was about skepticism, Is more like, where does it go? But you know what I mean, that we don't just consider that carte blanche all the time. So it's those types of things. And then similarly enough, how would you feel if someone just came up to you and asked you that same question? So again, mindful, tact. Working out later, so just don't want to always show you everything. But so that's an important thing. But it's still, like I said, that the only way to learn is to ask questions. Okay, so let's go through this here. Specific questions. Have you had the surgery? What surgeries have you had? Are you planning to have surgery, and what did your surgery cost? Okay, so those, we actually kind of touched on that a little bit, but that also doesn't cover everything, because quote-unquote the surgery, there are lots of surgery, mind you, again, anybody can have lots of different types of surgeries, but if there was a typical shopping list for myself as a trans woman that I could go under, right? But that I could elect for. 3 off the top of my head. So we already talked well, 4, I guess it would count an orchi, right? So anyway, orchi vaginoplasty, right? So downstairs business. Breast augmentation surgery is another, I don't want to know if it's popular or not, or I don't know if it's popular or not, but and I don't want to say it's popular. But breast augmentation surgery is, certainly an option. And then there's also facial feminization surgery. Those are typically the most talked about, right, in terms of the to-do list, I guess it would be a good way to put it, especially for people who transition significantly after their first puberty. So, as I already discussed downstairs, it's, like I said, day surgery out of practicality, but otherwise anything major, not in the cards. Breast augmentation surgery, not in the cards either, right? Like, that is, again, still, give me about a year or so until I kind of have an idea where things even start to kind of plateau at, and then just see how I feel. Right? I've never envisioned myself to have a big, big like voluminous chest or anything like that. It's not my style. If it happens to develop to that, okay, so be it, right? Like, I'm just happy for my body to be what it is, right? Like now, not before, but now. But yeah, like I don't like be like, oh, I wish I had a bigger chest or whatever. And but again, who knows? I don't know, maybe just wake up one day and feel different. And facial feminization surgery was one of the most challenging ones for me because I had a lot of trouble seeing my face in the mirror in a past life. Everything was wrong. And the reality is everything was wrong because I didn't like, it's not that I didn't like what I looked like. I didn't like who I was. There's a big difference. I felt like I would have to do this, that, and the other thing to be wanted or accepted or pretty or whatever. Like I thought everything was wrong. And it's the farthest thing from the truth now. And I'm grateful that with being on HRT, you get some slight changes just how your face, for example, looks in the first place. Definitely, HRT does not affect the skeletal system, right? So I've got the same bones and the same size and the same places as they were in a past life. If anything, what they do, or what HRT can do is affect density, right? But it doesn't affect change shapes or anything like that. But it could affect bone density. But what it does do is it affects little things like fat redistribution and whatnot. And so, there's just a couple little curves here or there that have, weren't in a past life. And then, of course, with laser hair removal, right, it just changes a bit of like that underlying color that would always just stick with me and so on. So I'm not, like, I can't imagine being like, oh, I want to have a nose like this, I want to have a chin like this, I want to have cheekbones like this, I want to have a forehead. I can't imagine those thoughts. But that's, maybe I'm unique like that, I don't know, right? But absolutely, facial feminization surgery is something that a not uncommon amount of trans women go through, and it's because they don't like how their body was, which is perfectly fine, and it's fortunate that there are people who can like help restructure those things. The recovery process is long and intensive, and having people to care for you is very important for something like that. But again, for me, for something like that, I would need, like, honestly, no, I don't even know, right? Like, between facial feminization surgery and like the big surgery downstairs, those are so far off my radar. And when it comes to like breast augmentation surgery, same thing, right? Not on my radar. And again, and the thing that's funny too is it's kind of temporary, if that kind of makes sense, right? Like, I don't know. So I'm in no rush for any of those. But like I said, the orky, sure, right, why not? Because, like I said, it's practical. And then about what does it cost? That's covered by Manitoba Health. I feel like I should just look into it just because I'm just curious about it. But I think a vaginoplasty is covered by Manitoba Health, and I think breast augmentation and facial feminization surgery, I think those are out of pocket, or through like private health insurance for some places, I think. So, but don't quote me on that. Alright, let's see here. What does hormone therapy do? How long have you been on hormones? Are you planning to go on hormones? And what hormones do you take? Okay, so I kind of got around some of those anyway. I'm just going to change how I'm sitting here. Oh, so much more comfortable. Shut up, cushion. Okay, so what does hormone therapy do? How long have you been on hormones? Are you planning to go on hormones? And what hormones do you take? Okay, so yeah, I am planning to go on hormones a while ago. I'm on hormones. So I've been on HRT since February 1st of 2020. And so I was alluding to it earlier that when I started HRT, it was still estradiol and Cypertenor, is that how it's pronounced? But anyway, so estrogen and a hormone blocker. And they were lower doses at the time because you're kind of getting your body acclimated to the change. And then after about 3 months, then I was ramped up from 2 milligrams to 3, and then 3 to then 5 to then 6 milligrams of estradiol. Everything's taken orally. I'm just rambling numbers here, but to help educate the hormones that I take. I heard that one. This has been rubbing up against. I'm so sorry. So sorry. So sorry. This is 50 minutes long. I'm not doing this again. But so anyway, the prescriptions that I use are all taken orally. So every morning. Same with I've got another prescription just for sleep. or my sleep disorder, I should say. But so I just take them all in the morning, and that's it for the day. And there are different types of ways to be on HRT, or different ways that things are used. For example, there could be patches, there could be injections. There are a bunch of different ways to go through HRT based on the medication that's been prescribed to you. Itchy ear. Otherwise, as I mentioned, what does hormone therapy do? It is, well, and let me put it this way as well. Hormone therapy, when I'm saying it, of course, is in a way of talking about with transitioning. Hormone therapy is not exclusive to trans individuals, because there are many other people, for whatever reasons, that their body stops producing the hormones they need for a healthy life, and so they could very easily go under a very similar regimen to carry on with their life accordingly. Please don't quote me specifically on this, but I feel like, and I feel like I read this before, which is why it comes to my mind, but like women who go through menopause, right, when their body is no longer producing the hormones that they've been normally been dealing with for the bulk majority of their life, if the body is no longer producing hormones, you still need to have hormones in your body, right? Between testosterone or estrogen, you still need to have hormone production for a variety of healthy elements of your life. One of them, even as I mentioned earlier, was bone density. And so a prescription that I have could be very similar, right, to something that others are going through, not with the hormone blocker, of course, but that others use to just carry on with a normal life because of whatever else happens in their own lives. So, to better phrase the question that I'm reading here, what is hormone therapy? It's hormone replacement therapy, which is what I'm on, because that involves the hormone blockers. And as I alluded to earlier, that is interrupting the effects of testosterone, right, to then allow what the effects of estrogen would do. And what that has done, now that, and that's like, for me, right, because of course there's absolute differences between HRT for a trans woman as there is for a trans man, massive differences. But otherwise, what it does for myself is a few things. It absolutely thins facial and body hair. Like, facial hair is pretty, like, I, just clean everything up anyway. Just to look closely at any woman out there, right? You'll see little blonde hairs all around, right? Like, no different, right? But it's fantastic. Like, I just say it's fantastic. Like, it's like an epiphany or whatever, but it's instead of having a full 5 o'clock shadow or whatever, like, gone. And anything that ever regrows, before I find it and yank it out, little thin blonde hairs or anything like that. And of course on the body absolutely, right, is, kind of in line. Well, I shouldn't say kind of, right? Totally is, right? In line with what, body hair would be like for any other woman. And which is variable, right? Because some women have more hair than others, right? And some women have thicker hair and finer hair and whatever, right? So what I can say is just it's absolutely not that same, like, amount of body hair with the growth and the thickness and the darkness, right, that it was before. So that is one of the biggest things that happens with HRT. Skin is significantly softer. And then also, aside from softer, when it comes to fat redistribution, as I mentioned before. So with, now first off, there are typically 3 different body types with the way that the muscle and fat distribution goes in that person in themselves. regardless if they're male, female, or non-binary. It's was it ectomorph and endomorph and something or other amorph? I think it's along those lines. But anyway, so the body's already got like a predetermined composition of how muscle and fat gets distributed, and also it's like, and even just within themselves, how they're composed. So just now that's understood. Comparing between men and women, or as I like to say, testosterone-based bodies, fat distribution typically goes straight to the abdomen. Typically. Right? Because again, different body types and whatever, right? But otherwise, it was biased typically to the abdomen, and then kind of a little sporadically anywhere else. But if you take a look, right, you look at different men in their different shapes, and you'll see typically a little roundness around the belly, way more than anywhere else. And then with women, or estrogen-based bodies, hips and thighs, big surprise. Around. Hips and thighs, big surprise. Breasts, of course. And then you'll find noticeable change, right, when it comes to cheeks. And then just essentially the rest of the body mostly gets distributed evenly otherwise. But that's kind of how things get prioritized. So with that skin's not only softer, but it feels thinner because there's absolutely more fat underneath my skin than before. So that's something that's happened as well. On a note, I should point out when I was mentioning with breast growth. So your mom actually asked this question yesterday, and it was a great question. That if for whatever reason I stopped HRT today, the answer is yes. Pretty much everything goes back. It's called detransitioning. And it's possible. Some people do that, right? They might realize that there's a situation happening in their life where transitioning is no longer an option, or whatever it may be. Right, so detransitioning is possible, and reversible isn't the right word, right? But when testosterone starts to override estrogen, then all the testosterone things will start to happen. So, two things don't change. One, what gets built up here typically stays. You might get a little reduction, but otherwise, what was established, it ain't going anywhere. And then the other major one is when it comes to the sperm production and fertility, that it is likely, but not flat out guaranteed, that you're sterile, right? That after being on HRT for long enough, you've pretty much buzzed out the boys, and there's not much left. However, that again is not a guarantee. So it is entirely possible to transition, detransition, and then still be fertile enough to have children. And even then, for example, that could be a possibility for some reason. It might be, just to give an example as to why somebody may detransition, that they might have the love of their lives and they absolutely want kids, and this individual didn't do any like freezing sperm or whatever, right? They didn't do that, and realize that they want to do this and want to have a kid and they want it to be their kid, right? And so on and so on and so on, right? And they might roll the dice on it. That's a big roll of dice. That's a huge roll of dice, right? And then whatever happens after that happens. But it's there's a non-zero probability that actually will result in a successful pregnancy. So it's just an example. But so anyway, right, that was it was a good question. Yeah, no, if HRT stopped this exact second, right, over time, then things will start to roll back. And yeah, no, that's it. Just thinking about it. So otherwise, what else does HRT do? We kind of alluded to it earlier, breast development. Because it's more than just muscle and fat, right? There's still stuff underneath, but it's the development of that is well, with progesterone, right? Like it's possible that development will actually get to be very similar to a for a natal female. Yeah. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head as to what all the cellular development is there, but otherwise, right? Like that of course, breast development comes with the territory, and again, your mileage may vary, right? Because the kind of like what I was saying after dinner. And part of the reason why I'm so at peace with myself is because my body is me, right? Like my blueprint is in my DNA, and so being on HRT is unlocking that blueprint, or pushing pieces of that blueprint at whatever level that the pushing goes to. But it's not changing any paths. It's not redesigning that blueprint. It's just depending on how much work it's putting into it. If that makes sense, right? Like if you had a blueprint for a house, a 2-story house, an attached garage, right? That you might only have a 1-story house, period. In it, like before you go on HRT, but then as soon as you start on HRT, depending on how much, the change of hormones or the levels and whatnot, the 1-story might turn into a 2-story. You might not have the attached garage yet, but it's 1-story to a 2-story. But then now you crank things up a little bit, right? Because medication allows you to do that, or whatever. And now, of course, there's the attached garage, right? But under no circumstances, right, will any amount of HRT all of a sudden turn that 2-story house into some sort of side-by-side complex, right? It's like you're just kind of following the path. It's just how much are you going down it. So when it comes to breast growth, like breast growth is put with a little star beside it, right? That's how much growth there is. And then otherwise, and coming from an athlete's point of view, of course, this is something that obviously gets with a lot of controversy, right? But muscles, endurance, overall strength, of course that changes. Testosterone affects muscle development, and so moving testosterone affects muscle development. And so what I am diligent on, right? Well, I've always been keen on working out in the first place, and I am with no question in the best shape of my life now, more than ever. And a lot of variables led to that, right? Just having more committed time to doing it and so on, right? But otherwise, I cannot lift the same amount that I used to. I cannot run as far and as fast as I used to. Just little things like that, and again, that's also relative, right? Because when it comes to lifting, I can lift as much as I used to, but I need to put more practice and training into it. And again, just because of muscle building, I'm grateful that, again, my body type is athletic. I'd like to consider myself pretty strong already for my size, but I know with full certainty that I'm nothing close to what my potential could be otherwise. But, strength hasn't ever really been my worry anyway. I've always been more concerned about mobility, and even then, I can't remember how I was mentioning it before, but I remember I was talking about my mobility being more important than strength, because to do some serious strength training, you really have to get into more explosive type of exercises, or really maxing out some reps and whatnot. And I still have a lot of muscle tightness in just different areas of my body, and I know that I don't have as much, as I've mentioned a few times already, regarding mobility and whatnot too. So doing big explosive exercises, or like high max rep exercises, has a chance of hurting me. And so I would rather just make sure that I've got good fluidity, that I'm not sore. Like, I love doing yoga every morning, and I'd like to say I love running. I hate running, but I love cardio. Right? Like, I find cardio, of course, when it just comes to calorie regulation and just overall endurance, right? So those two things are big for me, and then otherwise strength is just kind of comes with the territory from there. But I also know that pound for pound, pound for pound, it's not like drastically less. Like, full disclosure about that, it's not like all of a sudden I can't lift a feather or anything like that. But I know pound for pound that if I put the exact same amount of work into, like, let's say the last year, but I put that into a past life, I absolutely would be much more stronger than what I am right now. So, and it's just going to be like that, which is fine. Which is fine. And part of the reason why I like to work out as much as I do is because it also helps validate when people want to criticize me for having a boy's body or whatever. Because my body's in shape. It's not in a gender. It's fit, it's athletic. And anyone can be in that condition if they're able to create that time and opportunity for it, right? Like, I have the ability to do that, and I use it. And so if anyone wants to criticize what life was like in a past life, as opposed to the fact that I take care of myself, I'm healthy, right? I really, really want to make sure that if I was going to do some sort of activity and ready to play sport now, right, that has nothing to do with gender, right? That has everything to do with being ready to play and doing what you can to be, like, ready to perform. So, but I do know, like I said, that pound for pound, that if I was to compare what my regimen was like for the last year and just transplant that to a while ago, right, absolutely would have been stronger then. So, all right, let's keep going here. What are puberty blockers? Okay, so I answered that already. Are children too young to know their gender? No. Nope, not at all. Not at all. And I'll say it like this. Like, I've been trying to think how to phrase it. From my earliest memories, I knew something was off. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I didn't know what I was, but I knew who I wasn't. If that phrases it better. I remember from my earliest memories that I did not like being in my body. I did not feel comfortable every time that I would get automatically just put into the box, right, of all the boy things. And I would participate, right, because, like, I didn't know how to say that it felt wrong. But I knew for sure that I was in the wrong place. I even remember, like, my earliest memories, and I'm trying to think, like, geez Louise, I had a terrible sleeping schedule when I was a kid, my lord. But, like, 5, 6, I don't know, I'm trying to remember, when was I watching, like, TV before kindergarten? But, like, on whatever channel it would be, they would have, like, the workouts shows or whatever. Now again, right, like I was born in 1981, so let's remember about like programming at the time. But like early in the morning, there would be those morning workout shows, and I remember seeing like the lead what's that role from? Anyway, right? But like the people would be like the front of the show, and it'd be like, I wish I was her. Like I just like without using those specific words, it was just like be like that's that speaks with me, right? Like that's who I want to be. This is the life that makes me happy. Like all of those things. And I remember, right, that I would always find time or reason to try to like sneak some sort of connection to like anything feminine in my life without being like blatant about it or whatever. But it would always just resonate with me. So yeah, children are not too young to know their gender. Never. They might be too young to be able to articulate it, and that's where it's important for people to help ask the questions to guide that answer in a truthful way, in a non-pressured way. If there was a way, that I can go back in time and like at the age of 5 and have someone just ask me, Brad, would you rather live like a girl, or would you rather be raised as a girl, or do you wish you were a girl? And if I was able to be asked that question by someone who I trusted was asking in an innocent way and not like a criticizing sort of way, to have the ability to say yes, it could have changed my life entirely, obviously. And obviously it is what it is, but if that could have ever just been an option, and like to know that I could just safely say yes, right? Is that possible? Yes, no, absolutely, right? Like, we can raise you like a girl if that's what brings you happiness, then life would have been very different. What would you like your name to be? Taylor, who knows, right? But yeah, I knew from my earliest memories. And it was only, I think I was about 12 when I started to just learn some of the words of trans, like, or just in that neighborhood. But I've always known that I was not in the right place. And it made it was difficult. So, yeah, children are not too young to know their gender. They know. It's like, they know, period. Are transgender people confused or going through a phase? That's loaded because transgender is a very dynamic word for starters, and so when it comes to phases, it's like there's no right or wrong way to be trans. To just put that simply, there's no right or wrong way to be trans. So when it comes to phases, it might be possible, and I only say might because I'm not non-binary, and so I don't understand what that experience is like, and the same with a bunch of other gender identities. So I can't speak on their behalf. But is it possible to affiliate with different identities as you learn more? For sure, why not? Why not? I don't know if that inherently would be being in a phase of being trans, but there might be sections of self-discovery, right? That could be a good way to put it. When it comes to are trans people confused, I don't know if confused is the right word, but I struggled with acceptance. I was confused as to why can't I just say this, right, and with harmful language. I just wanted to be normal. So I like, for many of my friends, and I'm sure even your mom, like the version, like whatever crying looks like via text message, just being like, why can't I just fucking be normal, right? And it wasn't about being confused more than struggling with accepting the I knew it was going to be a journey, and I didn't have the mental space available to feel like I was ready to do it. And I just wanted that to go away so I can just play a video game and not have what was nagging in the back of my head. I just wanted to play sports and not think nonstop about, will I ever be accepted if this happened. I just wanted to go on a date or be in a relationship or have somebody love me without me feeling like I'm going to drop a bombshell and just ruin the experience or be rejected and so on. That's what I wanted when I would be crying about wanting normalcy, because I wanted things to be easy. I wanted to keep my privilege. When it came to confused, I never felt like it was wrong. It was a matter of learning and acceptance and rationalizing and justifying and sometimes almost like bargaining with myself. Like, oh, it's only this. You're like, excuse me. But it's like, it's this is enough, and by this is enough, I mean like in a pre-transition life, and just keep a weekend to myself or whatever, and be like, no, this is fine. Except it wasn't, obviously. Or like, I'll just get into a loving relationship and I'll be distracted, and then this will just go away anyway. No, doesn't work like that, by the way. So it was never about confusion for myself. So to answer, right, confused or going through a phase. Well, like I said, for starters, that's a really personal question, and I wouldn't ever ask a trans person that question, because that's really offensive. Right? But like, and if I was to reframe that, right, if you ever wanted to ask that question to somebody who you know is trans, right, to say, like, what has your experience been like? Have you, like, do you feel like this is where, have you always felt like this is where you belong, right? Are you happy? Those types of things, instead of questioning if they're just riding the wave for a moment, right? Is this like, are you here, right? Like, are you where you want to be, and so on. So, when it comes to being confused, I think that's more like, the presentation of it may be more like somebody trying to invalidate their reality and trying to fit in with social norms, right? While trying to maintain an authentic connection to themselves. I think might look like confusion. It's more on like the social presentation versus the internal feeling. I've said it often enough that one of the largest obstacles when it comes to growing up as a trans person was putting so much energy and effort into keeping everyone around me happy and comfortable, by sacrificing myself without losing myself. So I don't think I ever came across as confused, but I probably didn't make it look easy to anyone, especially anyone who had started to like grasp or know that that I was dealing with with a lot of stuff that I wasn't letting out. So, what was your birth name, and can I see photos of you before you transitioned? Okay, so that is a very invasive question, or set of questions. Now, I've made it very clear, my birth name, Brad. Happy to share it, right? Like, when I transitioned, I changed my profiles and whatnot straight over from Brad to Taylor, because I wanted to use that as a mechanism for visibility for people who might have not known that I've transitioned and so on. Whereas many other trans individuals essentially delete everything from a past life. Everything from the past life and start fresh. I'm still getting emails to Brad. I just haven't got around to changing. I've got whatever. I'm perfectly fine with that. But that is not something that is common. My name is Taylor. I do not appreciate the idea of Brad and Taylor being expected to be interchangeable, because they are not. People can't hurt me when they call me Brad, because it doesn't hurt me, because it's very simply a reflection of themselves. I don't get hurt by that. Yeah, okay, congratulations. My name used to be Brad. I legally changed my name. Share your bigotry. What did he do? Right? Like, you're the one looking like a fool, not me. But that also has the potential to hurt many trans people, because they can affiliate their own personal, let's say, traumas of a past life with that past name. That's often why it's called a dead name, because that life is now dead. This is the new life, right? And that's a common dialogue. This is not a new life for me, right? This I could say things like, this is finally living, which it is, but I'm 40. I'm not 1. Right? I wouldn't be where I am without Brad's journey. Right? I wouldn't be the person that I am without going through the life that I've had. And I'm happy to keep that. I'm happy to say, this is who I am. This is who I was. When it comes to seeing pictures of a trans person before they transitioned, that is that as well is kind of an invasive question, and I'm happy to share personally. Something on my to-do list. It's low priority because I feel I've got other stuff to do, but I do want to get around to making like a transition timeline video. I've posted befores and afters on Twitter, for example, before, because I'm proud of it, right? I'm happy to see where I've been and where I am. I'm happy, right? And I'm proud, right? To like, look at the comparison. Handsome and pretty, fun. And but that's definitely not a question to just overtly ask most. And because again, right, like we don't know what this individual's journey has been like, and they might not want to connect in any way, shape, or form with what their past life was. So I do want to get around to making that timeline video, but again, I feel I've got more pressing things to do than like go through my photo album, but whatever, one day, someday. And but yeah, and like trying to think if there was an easy place. No, whatever. Anyway, that's said it. I've posted enough, and it'll happen again, right? I'm sure. But yeah, like I said, with befores and afters, or so on. So, because yeah, I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of making it through life, and I underline, I would not fundamentally be me without every second, every minute, every hour, every day of my past life. And if a large portion of my past life was me being addressed as Brad's part of my journey. End of story. Literally for everything else, or like I was mentioning with emails and whatever, it's just getting around to updating the name or whatever, because most of it's automated and whatnot. But like otherwise, right? Like I can tell the difference between just, oh shit, I forgot to update this profile, and somebody being deliberately bigoted and ignorant or whatever it be. So there's people who I haven't seen in ages in person, largely because of COVID and so on, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's automatic slips of Brad, right? Because just the natural habit, right? Like there's a relearning process for people too when it comes to transitioning. There's totally a learning process for peers and coworkers and whatever to just go through there too. Now at this point, let's be honest again, with COVID, right, like it's been a while, right? It's definitely been a while. But again, that transitioning is also a social process. And you have to allow the space for other people to transition too. And like I mentioned, I have the ability to tell the difference between ignorance, right, and innocence. I can tell when something's an accident, and I can absolutely tell when something is intentionally harmful. So, when it comes to what's my birthday? Brad, simple, duh. I shouldn't say duh, right? That's what the point of the question is. But again, if some rando asks me that, I know, I'd probably just answer. I'm just trying to think of the situation. Again, it kind of just is, it's an assessment of the individual, right? Because, like, that, like, right, like, figure out, like, what's their behavior and so on. But, yeah, Brad. What bathrooms do trans people use, and what bathroom do I use? The bathroom trans people use is the bathroom that they identify with. their gender identity dictates the bathroom that they are entitled to use. Period. 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 It's interesting when it comes to bathroom bills, because those were largely introduced as political mechanisms to stoke the fire, to get votes from the ignorant, to sum it up in a nutshell. People whose brains were too smooth to know how to vote accurately, right? So the least they can do is try to get them to vote, period, for something that they were sensationally opposed to for no good reason. The bathroom bills are always fun, because the reality is the dialogue is the dialogue is pretty much saying, hey, we don't think you're pretty or handsome enough to be in this bathroom. Right? Like, because how else is it phrased? Is there a genital inspector? Right? Is there anywhere that would have a bathroom? Well, actually, let me not discuss some high schools in the States, but that aside, like, how would anyone feel going into a bathroom having a genital inspector? And if you think about it, let's keep using a common number of 0.5% of Canadians are trans, give or take, which means 1 in every 200 people are trans, give or take, which means if we're just considering a fluid average, that if there was to be a genital inspector, 199 cisgender individuals would be showing whatever to somebody likely unwillingly, because if you got to do your job, you have to be accurate, right? Oh, or are we only going to go ahead and isolate the ones who we don't feel should be in here because they just happen to have features that I would automatically define as from another gender, right? So it's dumb, and then people panic on that because they feel there's sexual deviance and everything to that too, and whatever. Is it comfortable going to the washroom? You never know who you're going to run into, right? But that doesn't have me living in fear about the bathroom, because it can't. Why would it matter? Why would it matter? Like, if I lived in fear for the feelings of every person around me, what's the point of even going out the door? What's the point of going to the grocery store? What's the point of going to dinner with you guys? Right? If I carried so much fear about, what other people may or may not do, fuck them. That's them showing their own insecurities, right? I'm entitled, right? I'm entitled to live a fully functional and valid life, and you better believe I'm doing that. I'm not letting some idiot stop me, right? I'm not playing any games to buckle because of someone else's bigotry. Not on my watch. So the bathrooms that trans people use, right, are, the exact same bathroom with the gender, that their identity is. I'm not gonna lie, right? That sometimes there may be a preference to, use a unisex washroom or a family washroom, private washroom, for sure. Because safety is an important thing. Like, the thing that's important is, like, being conscious about safety is ongoing. That's never going to change. Not while the world is how it is. But when it's all said and done, if I got to go to the washroom and there's two options, I'm going to be using a trans woman, I'm going to be using a woman's washroom. Period. End of story. You never think twice on it. Right? So that answers the next question. What bathroom do I use? Now granted, I also will say that my experience with washrooms is not as robust as it could have been, let's say, over the past year and change, because of COVID. Obviously, I haven't been out and about anywhere near as much as let's transplant this timeline a little earlier where, life was much more social, but that still wouldn't change. I don't know if I would have had any experiences in the bathroom to write home about, but otherwise, anytime I've gone to the bathroom, I go to the bathroom and do my business and leave, just like anyone else who goes to the washroom would have fucking thought. Right? Do transgender people regret transitioning or change their minds, and do you regret transitioning? It is possible for some trans individuals to regret transitioning, and for a variety of reasons. I can't relate to that personally, but I could very easily put it as they when it comes to gender dysphoria, it is an internal feeling, right? It is your body telling you that something isn't aligning in a healthy way. And it's also not a blatant, it's not like if it was to be written, for example, it is not exclusive dialogue. Kind of how I'm trying to phrase it. And furthering that, when it comes to transitioning, there are Lord knows how many challenges just by the nature of going through transition. Bodies change, emotions change, what goes on in your head changes in just a way of the word, of having mental clarity, or just now a new conversation with yourself, and so on. There are a lot of factors that very simply cannot be predicted. Very, very, very rarely is it possible for someone to go through transition and realize that based on what they were sharing with their gender therapist, for example, or by doing their own research and doing however they want on their own accord, that what they were articulating might not have been what they were trying to say, and therefore may have been offered something that seemed right at the time, and realized after the fact that it wasn't what they were asking for. It's possible. But honestly, just the same as any other, right? Like, everyone just tries to isolate the risk of an incorrect transition as a reason why transition shouldn't exist. And it's amazing because we have, actually I'll just use a perfect example for myself. In 2016, I was going through a very difficult moment in my life in the summer, and a friend of mine at the time, I was a mess. I vividly remember, like, every element of my life just blurred, and I was a complete mess. And a friend of mine recommended me to her family doctor, and I spoke to my family doctor or not my family doctor, her family doctor after I got there and whatever. 10 minutes? Maybe? 10 minutes? Oh, you have depression. And just gave me a prescription for depression and sent me on my way. So now I had a prescription for depression. Oh, and anxiety. Not to say that I wasn't feeling those, but he like set me up with a prescription after 10 whole minutes of me speaking of how I was feeling. And so I was taking depression and anxiety medication on a regular basis, which of course was affecting my body, right? It was affecting my day, it was affecting how I was thinking, it was affecting so many things. But the reality was it wasn't really addressing what was happening at all. At all. Shortly after, I started seeing a psychology student, right, through a program at U of M, and based on some discussion with her, and like in very not coincidental, but it coincided in time with a family doctor that I was having too. That between both of them, like, you don't have depression. I'm just going through some life, and let's get you off this. Short answer, I was dealing with some severe heartbreak. And there were some depressive episodes, of course, with dealing with that. But what, I was just going to be on a prescription until the end of time? Instead of, addressing what was happening? But this guy is perfectly fine with just writing a prescription for depression, sending me on my way. But, heaven forbid, we discuss transitioning, right? And then you get that super, super, super tiny percentage of individuals who realize that transitioning wasn't on their path. Depression and anxiety medication, just to put, like, also affect your body too. They might not make you grow boobies, but they affect your quality of living. But that's perfectly fine. I had to go, oh, whoopsie doodle, I misinterpreted you. Sorry about that. So sorry to your liver for me. So, when it comes to regretting transitioning, I don't know if regret's ever the right word. Because regret also carries a lot of personal reflection. Because would you regret doing it? Or would you use it as an opportunity to learn that it's not the path that was fit for you? Because you can reframe the experience in a not necessarily positive way, but it doesn't have to inherently be a negative way. Because I think I've said this before. When, regardless if it was earlier in another YouTube video or whatever, but when you make a decision at any point in your life, any decision you ever make, any decision you ever make, any decision you ever make, you will never, ever be able to tell if it's the right decision or the wrong decision, if it's a good decision or a bad decision. You will never, ever be able to tell that because, when you have a decision to make, you can go this way or this way during the path of life, this way or this way, and you choose to go this way, and you go down that path, and then you realize that's not the path that you wanted to take, or you can reflect on that being, this isn't the outcome that I was hoping for, or whatever. It is functionally impossible to go to that exact same moment in time, to go all the way back to that point in history, right? That spot, that time, that everything, to put the universe back to where it was. It is functionally impossible to go back to that moment you made the decision and try the other path and figure out what the results are like and compare the two. It is functionally impossible to do that. So how do you know if you made the right decision or the wrong decision? Because you can't. You have nothing to compare it against. What you can do is tell yourself and acknowledge and accept that any decision you make at any point in your life, right now, 10 seconds from now, 30 years from now, whatever it be, any decision that you make is the decision that you choose based on feeling like it makes you the most happy based on everything that you know at the time. Every decision you make is directly related to understanding what you know, what your comfort is, all those other circumstances, and this decision is what makes me happiest. Period. So some people may regret transitioning, but people also regret getting Taco Bell. I don't want to devalue that, of course, and put them in the same neighborhood, but regret versus learning and moving forward is a huge life skill, because who knows what would have happened if they didn't transition, right? So people can change their minds though, right? Because they might realize that being trans comes with obstacles, and maybe they have the ability to handle their dysphoria versus the discrimination, for example. It's possible. It is entirely possible. If, like, using myself for an example, I lost a ton of privilege, right, after transitioning. A ton of privilege, right? And if I had a place that I could suppress my dysphoria and accept my life for what it was way back when, and live a more privileged life, and just acknowledge that I just can't cope with the way that the world is otherwise, sure, that might be something that it's not impossible to consider, right? Like, you think about it, like, it's not easy. This isn't easy. It is not an easy gig. It is not an easy gig at all. It's not easy. Do I regret transitioning? Fuck no. I'll do it again. I hope I don't ever have to do it again, obviously, right? But, like, anytime that I've ever, like when it comes to, like, regretting transitioning, like I mentioned earlier, I'm on another prescription now, because, like, not only have I asked things to be turned up to 11, I'm like, more, right? Like, come on, let's go. I love myself more than ever. I'm living, finally. For the past 39 years, right? Like, I'm 40 now, right? But so before I transitioned, I existed. I never felt like I never felt like doing anything as drastic as suicide, but I never wanted to wake up, because what was the point? I woke up and lived a meaningless day, an inauthentic day, an unfulfilling day, right? And another day of just wondering why the world is unkind, and wondering why it can't just be easy, and why I can't just snap my fingers and all of a sudden have the exact same privileged life, but feel comfortable with myself, right? Like, that was my life. And now my life's full of, like, hardships that I never would have experienced before, and I've never been happier. I've never been more comfortable. I've never been more excited to wake up. I've never smiled as much. I have never taken as many selfies. I have never just looked in the mirror as much at me and be like, you're fucking amazing. I've never just caught myself looking at myself and be like, here you are. I've never just smiled as much as hearing my own name. I've never understood what happiness felt like until I started to recognize that allowing myself to be me was the first step to what happiness is. And this is the most amazing feeling I could ever describe. because if this is what happiness is, I want everybody to feel it. Because I'm elated. I get burnt out from, things that are just frustrating based on like systemic issues or whatever, right? Because of course with my advocacy and whatever. But nothing gets me down. Nothing hurts me. I get disappointed with people and their bigotry. And I get like, I'm like, okay, no, I see your game, right? Like things like that. But that's nothing related to transition. That's just like, whether it's social things or whatever, and be like, okay, no, so you're not a friend or so on, which is something universal that everybody can experience. But I've never been more excited to get out of bed every single day and just enjoy myself. I get frustrated about going to sleep because I want to enjoy myself more and more and more. If I can live a life of being awake 24/7, so I can just be me and just keep doing my thing and not get interrupted by sleep, I would do it. I love me. I love me. I love me. I've never been so happy and so confident and so I'm not going to say that I wish I did this earlier, because I wouldn't be who I am without going through my journey like I mentioned before. But like I am just, it's frustrating for the amount of people that used to be friends with Brad and don't talk to Taylor anymore or whatever, because if they liked Brad, they would in principle love Taylor, because I am the absolute best version of me that I've ever been, and I only get better every day. But you know what? It's them who's missing out, not me. They're the ones missing out. All they're doing is making my phone book cleaner and cleaner. Seriously. And I have no regrets at all. I can't regret anything. I love it. I love me. I'm so happy. How can you tell if someone's transgender, and are you transgender? Well, I'll answer the second question first. I am transgender. Now when it comes to being an invasive question, that is an incredibly invasive question, and I actually have personal experience being with a cis friend in a past life who was asked that question, and she was hurt. So, and I think she was hurt. Now here's the thing that's kind of a funny flip. So we were both at an event, and we were both at an event, and this guy starts hitting on me, telling me I'm pretty and blah, 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 right? And in conversation, I mentioned that I was trans. This was a long time ago too, so I'm trying to remember how it was phrased, because I didn't, knowing where I am now still wasn't in my head, but I'm trying to remember how it was articulated before. But nonetheless, so dude's all over me. But then turns to my friend and asks her if she was like me too, and that's where she got hurt. And she's beautiful. Like, I'm just gonna make that clear. It's not right to say that because everyone's got their own definition of beauty, but I think you know where I'm going with that. And so that's like I said, it's a really invasive question to ask, because like I don't even know, like not being cis, I wouldn't even know how to be like, how dare you ask that? I could see the question being asked if there was, for example, if you were going to be at a rally, for example, like a trans rights rally, and so on, or someone might be, waving a trans flag or whatever, and it might just be to be like, like, are you trans? Do you support this? And then, no, I'm an ally or whatever, right? Okay, I can kind of get that. But in the middle of a grocery store, that's brave. And so, how can you tell if someone's trans? I was having a good question with that with a friend the other day, because, like, how do you tell if someone's trans? I know myself, I can say I personally have identifying features that I would recognize as trans, but the thing that's funny too is it's really not a be-all, end-all. Now granted, I'm going to say this, remember I was saying earlier, hashtag normalize the budge, or normalize the bulge? Okay, so, okay, that's a good example of, right, being able to oh, that might be a tell. But otherwise, people have a variety of voices, people have a variety of, body shapes and types, and so on and so on and so on. So, to presume is dangerous, and it ain't right? Because I don't think I need to get too deep into it. It's just to presume someone doesn't match an ideology of, who's supposed to look what way and how, and then challenge somebody based on that. That kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about bathrooms. What, are we only going to, do general inspections on people who are ugly? We're going to do general inspections on people who've got a husky voice? So on, right? Are we going to do general inspections on someone who just happens to have, facial hair growth because it's just the way that their body's developing testosterone? Right? Like that the judgment creates harm. So there is no question that testosterone and estrogen, if it was to be on the exact same individual at birth, if they were to, like, flip the switch, whatever, right? For sure, there would be a difference in body development, and there are things that become predominantly developed because of testosterone and predominantly developed because of estrogen. But again, it is not 100% bulletproof. Excuse me. So, how to tell? You ask. And how do you ask? Mindfully, right? Place and time, and like that isn't that, like, I'm just trying to think on how a cis person would feel about that. I know myself, if I was asked that question, I would immediately answer that with, what makes you think that? I want to hear what it is from that other person to justify being able to answer that question. So I want you to think about that. How would you feel if you asked somebody that question? And I understand that it's coming from a place of innocence, but how would you feel asking that question and the first thing that was said was, what makes you think that? And if you didn't have a quick answer, like, well, I don't have one right now, but it'd be like, well, you've got a trans pride flag tattoo, right? Or as I mentioned, that you're at the rally and you're carrying this flag, and I was curious, or whatever. But if it was going to be something like, well, your voice sounds kind of manly, that's your answer, you're prepared to have a bad time. So, like I said, just be mindful. What's the difference between a transgender woman and a drag queen? Maybe nothing, maybe everything. It is entirely possible to be a drag queen and a trans woman at the same time. But drag is entertainment. I don't have I don't really associate much with the drag community because to me it's entertainment, it's theater, it's somebody being paid to um, flamboyantly express gender stereotypes. Um, that said, right, the drag community is very visible, right, and the challenge that I often take away when it comes to drag is not necessarily about the performers, but by the fans, because a lot of times the fans seem to immediately associate drag as trans, and that's the visibility that's in their head about what life of a trans person is like. Furthering that, I'll use RuPaul as a solid example. RuPaul identifies, RuPaul's identity is a gay man. Right? You know, our queen is a gay man. So that's like a drag queen, when they're done their performance, take their clothes off, take their body modifications off, take their hair off, and they're done work for the day. I have nothing to take off, and I'm working to live my life 24/7. So they're totally not the same person, but that's not to say that trans women can't be drag queens. I'm trying to think of her name. There was one who recently made some headlines, but nonetheless, though, as I mentioned, drag really exaggerates the gender stereotype, and the challenge of that, like I said, is not necessarily by the performers, but by the people who are enjoying it, and not for and forget that it's entertainment. On that note, I believe Netflix is an option. Absolutely check out Disclosure. I'm going to put a link for it in here. Not endorsed, I promise. But I remember I watched Disclosure when I was getting close to socially full-time. I don't watch a lot of documentaries or whatever. I don't watch a lot of TV, but still point stands. And it's utterly fantastic. It's utterly fantastic. It resonated with me incredibly strongly, and it does a really good job as a documentary explaining trans visibility in media, and drag's brought up in there too, of how media portrayal, right, creates the stereotype that trans individuals deal with on a regular basis. So I'll put a link in there and totally check it out if you're able to. I think it's an hour and 20 minutes long or something like that, but totally worth the watch. Why do there seem to be more trans people now, and is being transgender a new thing? Now, I want to answer that second one first. It actually resonates strongly with me of a conversation that I was having with somebody who I once considered even more of a friend, and our communications dipped significantly after this, but I remember getting a text from her. We were discussing, like, I was in the middle of just coming to, self-acceptance and whatnot after I started coming out, and it was right around the same time that BLM 2.0 was, being busy and whatnot too, and we were just talking about like the differences in oppression and whatnot, and to hear the line, I believe it was close to quoting, slavery existed before being trans was a thing, and that conversation ended quickly. Because being trans isn't a thing. Actually, as a matter of fact, that it's documented that of like transgender individuals existing in civilization years before anything close to slavery was becoming prevalent in civilization too. So, not to say that one's been here first, but being trans isn't a phase, as we talked about earlier. I just saw an email, but the difference between yesteryear and now are a couple things. One, there appear to be more trans people because of two main things. One, people finding more comfort in allowing themselves to be visible, right? Because of, whether it's more availability for social media, to communicate with other trans individuals, more resources available, more places to find support, more places to find comfort if things were to go awry, and so on. So that in itself, right, like, and plus the being the era of information, so much more as every day comes on, we have more information available, and so the ability for people to either recognize or diagnose being trans is only more available than it was before, just by the evolution of life and time. And then, as I mentioned, primarily also finding the fact that it's slowly becoming more and more safe to come out. And safe is the key word. It's a huge key word, right? Like, I came out when I was 39. And there are people coming out, pre-puberty, post-puberty, whatever. And being able to live more complete lives as adults. And they're able to do that because they have the ability, knowing that it's possible. And they have that comfort. They know that, do it. It's your life, do it. Live your life, be you, and so on and so on. And then, so as I mentioned, when it comes to social media, we're all, when it comes to social media, we see more conversation now, too. Even in the Olympics, we've had, for this year, we've had 3 out trans athletes, which of course brings trans visibility to the forefront. Sport is so huge in developing culture that having those athletes participate at an event of that magnitude reaches almost every community across the world, right? And so then that helps inspire further trans athletes to be visible, and so on and so on. Aside from trans athletes, then you get trans celebrities, you get trans influencers, you get trans business owners, you get trans politicians, you get da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Because when other people become visible, there's an element of comfort of being like, I feel like, okay, so everyone's accepting them, so now I can, I know I can feel safe too. Those types of things. That's why it seems like there's certainly more people now. And so, I guess that kind of answers both. It's like the amount of information allows a better understanding to identify authenticity, right? And then also provides that comfort of knowing that you can do it. And then just by that nature, if you're, still following, in the same circles and whatever, then there's just another person who pops up. With whom do transgender people have sex? How do you have sex? Just kind of at the question, like just the phrasing of it. With whom do transgender people have sex? With whom people want to have sex with transgender people? It's just like any other form of dating. I'm not into guys, therefore I don't have sex with guys. Have I had sex with men? Yes, but I was also desperate for validation. Really, that's the answer, by the way, for any guy out there who happens to see this. Thank you for validating me when I was incredibly depressed. But no, I would never date you. Because men are idiots. But no, like, trans people have sex with who? It's whoever they're interested in. Right? Because, like, correct me if I'm wrong, that's how sex is supposed to work. Two people mutually attracted to each other doing business. Right? If it was one way, that's a problem. And that goes across the board for anybody. So, just staring at the question how it was phrased. Myself, like, I uploaded a YouTube video the other day. So it's my last video, but I was talking about dating. I don't use dating apps because I want substance. I want people who I want people to learn me, and then I want to feel like that spark, that resonance in return. I'm not looking for certain qualifications or whatever. I've got standards, of course. Like women, right? And it's kind of it. You just get that spark, and then whatever happens, happens. How do you have sex? How do you and your partner have sex? Different strokes for different folks. Pardon the pun, right? There's lots of things that can happen, and it's no different than any other type of relationship too. Like, I'm gonna try to keep this PG here, but like, it was always about discovery and learning and excitement and comfort and boundaries, right? And you just be intimate with the other person, and whatever happens, happens, right? Like, again, no different than anything else. I will say the only thing, here, I'll give you a couple tidbits. So, no, well, it's possible that there need to be, like, accessories necessary at this point. Who knows? I legitimately don't remember the last time that I was intimate with somebody. Wow. And I legitimately don't remember the last time that Taylor was intimate with somebody. Okay, so I really can't, say the ifs and the maybes and the whats, because, like, body reacts differently when you're with somebody who you're comfortable with or who you love, and so on, right? Wow, that's been a while. Okay, well, with whom do transgender people have sex? I was gonna try to have something funny about just having, like, mutual attraction with or whatever, but it's not really funny. It's just straight up fact. But yeah, no, it's just like anyone else. Just like anyone else. Are trans men really just masculine lesbians, or trans women really feminine gay guys? Are you sure you're not just gay? I'm gonna answer the second one twice now. I'm gay now. It's funny, like, it dawned on me, way back when, right? But it was just kind of like in passing conversation or whatever, that we're talking about, well, do you like boys or girls? And I'm like, no, girls, still girls, definitely girls, right? And I'm like, oh shit, no, I guess that means I'm gay or lesbian, right? But I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess, right? Because on paper, and yeah, so So yeah, am I sure I'm just not gay? No, I'm now right, by definition I'm gay. And but otherwise, no. Trans men are men. Trans women are women. That's it. Really feminine gay guys are really feminine gay guys, right? Masculine lesbians are masculine lesbians. It's in the words. So simple as that. Simple as that. That goes through that page. Wow. 2 hours. Wow. I want to see. There was another site that I saw, and let's just see. There's another one I enjoyed. I wanted to see if any of these got written around here. I'll link this too. I'm a transgender woman. Ask me your invasive questions. There's a 24-year-old who answered questions on Reddit, and here are some questions that were in there, so I'll jump on those. When did you know you wanted to be female? I mentioned that earlier. That was like, I didn't know that I wanted to be female, but I knew that I didn't want to be a boy. But like I mentioned, I also was enamored by feminine things, and I knew that if I can just like adopt that body or that life, I would have. So if that answers that question, as far as my earliest memories, like I was saying earlier, do people treat you differently? Yes, I lost almost all of my privileges and almost the bulk majority of the network that I had pre-transition, like, so Brad, ghosted, and so on. I expected that. But I was also living a super lonely and empty life in the first place. So most of those relationships, and just by extension of the word, were not as fruitful as and enriching as wanted. It is what it is. But otherwise, do people treat me differently in terms of like, I can't A-B for people who didn't know me pre-transition, and because like they can't be different because they've only known Taylor, for example. And but I can say like just life experience. But even then, when it comes to being treated, it's also like my own take on life. Nothing hurts me. Like I said, it was like if people were, I'm just trying to think. Like I'm just happy. But otherwise, I do know, like, I wouldn't call it differently, right? Because like it comes with the territory and stuff like dealing with bigotry and being taken seriously and so on. So that could just be like generalized in terms of people, right? But that kind of goes back to what I was saying about losing my privileges. Because in a past life, 39-year-old white athletic Canadian cisgender heterosexual male, top of the food chain. Seriously, I can do whatever I want. Everyone listens to me, right? And now, a lot of barriers, but whatever. I don't care. How'd your body change with HRT? We discussed. And then to take what your mom said at dinner, even though I know that was always a running gag between her and I for however long, about me always saying, I was like, am I still pretty? And and I always remember that, especially when we'd be playing sports, like volleyball or whatever, and I would screw up and I'd look at her and like, am I still pretty? I'm still pretty. Right? And that was always something that was just kind of special to me, and especially because like that was a long period of time where of course she didn't know, and it resonated with me because that's why I asked that question. Right, because I was trying to feel out where she existed, in terms of Taylor, because I'd be using language just around people, right? Like it was just something that I did all the time to validate my safety, I guess, right? Just kind of gauge how people respond to questions and see how I can know where they exist in my life. And yeah, so I remember we'd always be asking, you know, especially after I screwed up, like I said, volleyball or whatever, and Mrs. said or however, am I still pretty? Am I still pretty? Right? Yes, you're still pretty, right? Or even just other times, you know, without anything, to be like, at least you're still pretty. So that always just meant a ton to me. And so at dinner, when she said, you know, you're definitely prettier now, it was awesome, right? Well, and I don't know, and you can think of it on so many different ways, because physically prettier, I'm smiling so much more now. Like my smiles are hardly restricted, and by hardly restricted, I mean like they're authentic smiles. Like when I'm laughing, I'm smiling to all of me instead of just like give as much as I felt comfortable with. And so it's little things like that, because otherwise everything else that I mentioned before. When did I first really feel like a woman? I don't know. I'm trying to think. Because I remember when I was, you know, even after I socially transitioned, I would still stutter when I would say trans woman. Because for a period of time I felt like I was still kind of like, you know, am I part of the club yet or whatever? And then it just grew comfy in my skin. I'm like, no, you know, I can certainly identify times that I've felt unique things, like a first major dose of like feminism and whatever. But no, it just kind of like, not necessarily feeling like a woman, but just like allowing myself to let go of my insecurities of like, am I in the right place? What was it like coming out to friends and family? Oh, you know what? What I will do, well, I'm going to link the HireWheller account in the description anyway. But coming out to friends, I had a very select few amount of friends that I wanted to share, and it happened sporadically. Like it's not like I just went blah to a group of people. It was because my personal networks have been about as big as hula hoops, right? Like I have a very limited amount of people at one point in my life who I consider personal close contacts, and I would feel things out as time went on to find out if they were somebody that I can start sharing more of myself about. Like, you know, my ex-wife found out everything that I knew about me way back when, like early in our relationship, in like 2003 or something like that. We ended up being divorced in 2011, and then through that, some of her friends, became our friends, of course, right? They ended up knowing, again, everything that I knew about myself at the time, or that I knew how to communicate about myself. I was in a relationship after that, who knew, and then it was that same situation in 2016, as a matter of fact, which was pivotal to where I am today, which by extension led to me sharing with some close friends of mine at the time, because when I was having difficulty dealing with the fallout from that, I explained to them why it was really difficult for me, and then I shared with a friend of mine, just pretty much during stay at home during COVID or whatever, because I was already on HRT and I wanted to share, and I was being very dancy around how to articulate it, but I knew I wanted to share with her, and so left little nuggets enough to the point where she like deliberately challenged me with a question of like, you know, what's going on or whatever. Your mom and I were getting into a fight, right? Not like fight, right? But we would be testy at each other. And I remember with our little tangle, it was like, you know what, fuck it, fine. Here's one I'm having a hard time, and I just abruptly shared it with her, and she just received that very positively. Like, it was just like kind of like I'm happy that I eventually shared with her, because well, here I am sharing a message with you, right, about life as a trans woman, right? So it shows, of course, how things went. And it's funny, I keep saying this, like, this video is only getting sent to you. I'm still posting it publicly, but of course I'm still going to share it. But I'm making sure that this is kind of oriented towards questions that you may or may not have. And then from then, when I was ready to go full-time, I shared on my birthday, my 39th birthday, I shared that with work and sports, to get that message out to those groups of people, which I hope would have expanded from there. And then through someone who was a friend of mine at the time, through their social media, by doing a before and after with her biz, and then I was building a volleyball team, and the people that I sent a text message to as a blanket invite, I also included the hey, by the way, I'm transitioning, so that, and I wanted to be transparent, so that if there was ever any controversy during the season, that you guys don't get blindsided by other people's bigotry. And then kind of the rest is history. When it came to my family, I never had a super strong relationship with my family anyway, and I ended up telling them, actually almost about getting close to a year ago today, thinking about it. I think it was the 7th or something like that. But I was doing an online interview, or not an online interview, but I did an interview with United Way that was getting posted online, and I felt that it probably would be a good time to pass the message on, so that they don't hear anything from a third person, or a third party, I should say, and be like, well, what the hell is this all about, or whatever. It was responded exactly as I expected, which was cold, not loving, authoritarian, just like not cool. It was exactly as I expected to. And so at that point, I'm like, whatever, fuck it, right? I'm done, right? And if anything, that moment kind of liberated me from. I stopped worrying about other people, and realized that I can't keep this idea in the back of my head that I have a responsibility to make sure that other people are happy with how I live my life. So eventually I find out that, big surprise, that other members in my extended family find out, and of course they talk between themselves, right? But nobody ever reaches out to me, because why would you ever do that? Because heaven forbid that you reach out to somebody you want to talk about. And so aside from the gossip, that I just got some feedback from a few people from extended family. I still relatively maintained my distance, because I don't like the idea of dipping my toes into some branches of family and being disassociated from others. I'm happy who I am, where I am. This is my life. Right? This is my life. I don't want to wedge my way into being accepted by family. And I also feel strongly that if you have to work for what you want, right? I worked for what I want. Look where I am. I worked for what I want. This wasn't a gift. This is hard fucking work. Every fucking thing I do is hard work. This is not a gift. This isn't a treat. This isn't a hand me over. This isn't a hobby. This isn't just a this is my life, and I have to work to live, right? And so if anyone wants to be part of my life, I have to work for that too. So that's the way I look at it. So what was it like otherwise in terms of the actual experience? Had to do it, right? Like especially after I came out, it's like it's so matter of factual now, right? Like it was stressful and overwhelming because of course the what ifs, what's going to happen. But as soon as I realized that no, I need to do this because it's just going to get done, it's just so matter of factual. Right? Yeah, it was long-winded because that's who I am. But otherwise, like, hey, I'm trans. Here's what's happening, and that's it. Will I have the op? We talked about that earlier. Maybe not. Who knows? Unlikely. What do you wish people understood about you? I'm the exact same person just as I was before. If anything, I'm a billion times better. I am the... If you liked Brad, you would absolutely fall over for me. Easiest. Nothing's changed otherwise. Live the same life, do the same thing. Medical history's changed, right? On paper. Body's changed somewhat. But I'm fucking beaming, I'm glowing, I'm happy, I'm laughing. Right? I still have all the exact same information that I had before in the back of my head and so much more. Right? I'm just like, and like, so even when, just going out for dinner last week or whatever, it's honestly, it's just another day at the mill. Just another day at the mill, right? Like it's not some satin sparkles, hyper glamorous effect. Yeah, okay, so I am, what's the word that your mom used? Eccentric. Sure, I know it. And like even yesterday, you can ask her, she probably would have killed me, right? If she could have, right? But still, but it's no different. It's just another day. And I love it, right? But I just like the amount of people who've ghosted me, sometimes I want to wonder why. And not necessarily why, like justify it, but more like, what's your fear? Right? Like, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of going to get gay all over you? Right? Or something like that. And so I would just like to understand that, because this is by far the best me, and I've hardly even gotten started, right? So that's something that I wish people understand. I don't need provisions, I don't need special cases, I don't need whatever, like, just another person, right? And I'm a hell of a person, and I'm a strong person, and maybe people don't want to hang out with me because I've unlocked my voice, right? I've unlocked my ability to speak my mind and not be afraid of losing someone because they might feel offended, because I was terrified of losing people because I hardly had people, right? Maybe people don't like the assertiveness, maybe people don't like the fact that I recognize the need for change and I demand it because it needs to be done. Maybe people don't like the fact that I'm not passive and quiet and submissive anymore. Maybe people don't like the fact that I'm not a shell of myself. Maybe those are the things. But you know what? The people who do like me being my best self, right, are the ones that I embrace. And the people who are too ignorant to recognize that's their loss. But I sure wish that people understood that I'm not a new person, I'm my best self, is what it is. I'm the exact same person who I was when they first met me, and now I'm allowing myself to actually be who I am around them. So that's what I wish people understood about me. And that answers that. 2.5 hours. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to upload this. I'm going to send this link eventually to your mom, and she can share it with you. Kick back and watch it some evening or whatever. Answer some of the questions. Make a list of your own. If we're all out again having dinner or whatever, right? Ask away. Seriously, ask away, please. Please. Ask me any questions that you may have. You're not going to hurt me. And like I said, I'll even tell you if a question you ask is invasive so that you know how to articulate it for someone else. I tell you that confidently. So if you're shy, don't be shy around me. I'll be more than happy to help you learn, because that's the only way you learn, by asking questions. For anyone else who watched through this, I hope you enjoyed. Right? Sorry for talking around you, but I wanted to make this public because this is, excuse me, it's just a nice series of questions to, but just a nice series of questions to answer. And and for any questions, ask away. There still is a series of questions on the HireWheller episodes that we've got called Dwell on It every Sunday at 6 Central, and over on Instagram, and so I'll throw a link up to that, which I've also got other videos on here too. I upload most of them, and I think that's kind of it. I was thinking if there are other questions that I forgot about answering. I think that's about it. I'm going to get off this concrete. That's my bet. And I hope this is a fun little watch, and I like the inspiration for it. I hope it brings some happiness, and we will talk later. Bye.